My fiancé's secret phone had photos of me from before we even met. I think I'm being stalked by the person I love most. I am currently situated during my midday respite at the colossal retail establishment Target, consuming a meager, joyless nutritional supplement bar because I can scarcely endure the consumption of genuine victuals at this moment, and I desperately need to articulate this ordeal before I completely forfeit my sanity. Do you recognize those instances where you are wholly convinced you exist within a stable and dependable romantic partnership, and subsequently, the cosmos simply makes the unilateral decision to utterly obliterate your existence? Yes, that is precisely the dire predicament in which I currently reside. The initial revelation. The initial catalyst for my profound distress occurred last Thursday morning. I was perusing the photo-sharing social platform Instagram whilst meticulously preparing for my occupation, double-checking that I had procured the appropriate hue of under-eye cosmetic corrector since my complexion has been in a frightful state recently. It was then that my gaze fell upon a photograph repository uploaded by Roland's first cousin, Natasha, documenting her matrimonial ceremony. The very sacred union that had transpired just the preceding day. The matrimonial ceremony to which I was conspicuously not extended an invitation, as Roland had explicitly informed me it was strictly an affair for immediate kin exclusively. He insisted that no additional companions or guests were permissible. He claimed his entire extended family was acting strangely about keeping the gathering incredibly intimate, and he expressed profound remorse over the situation, but asserted there was absolutely nothing within his capacity to rectify the matter. Like an unmitigated simpleton, I granted him my full belief. I genuinely trusted his narrative. The primary photographic image within the digital sequence depicted standard wedding fare, Natasha and her new consort radiating joy. Inconsequential. I nearly continued scrolling past this image, but an inexplicable compulsion urged me to swipe to the subsequent picture, and there he stood. My romantic partner of 2 complete years, engaging in a gentle rhythmic dance with some fair-haired female adorned in an exquisite emerald-colored gown. His hand was firmly positioned on her midsection, her cranium rested upon his clavicle, and both of them appeared as if they had materialized directly from the pages of a sentimental cinematic production. I became literally paralyzed, the applicator of cosmetic eye pigment suspended midway to my orbital region. My flatmate Jasmine inquired as to my well-being because apparently I had emitted a guttural sound akin to that of an injured creature. But the unfolding calamity intensified exponentially. I persisted in scrolling through the collection of images and discovered approximately 6 separate photographs of the 2 of them together. He was murmuring something confidential into her external acoustic canal while she was reacting with effusive laughter. She was draped in his tailored jacket over her upper body. He was gently placing a kiss upon her forehead while they were standing proximate to the beverage counter. They were seated at what was unmistakably the familial dining table during the repast, his forearm draped over the rear of her seat. The accompanying descriptive caption on the post declared, "So blessed to celebrate with kin. Special commendation to the most beautiful pair at my matrimonial event," followed by a multitude of heart-shaped emojis and digital tags. She had tagged both individuals. I subsequently tapped upon the digital tag of the blonde individual, whose designation was Carol. Roland's maternal parent, the same woman who has demonstrated chilling aloofness toward me since our very first acquaintance, who consistently has some passive-aggressive commentary regarding my occupation, my attire, or some other trivial aspect of my existence, had composed a remark on the post. Her commentary read, "Finally, a daughter-in-law I can be proud of," accompanied by an array of deeply moved, happy crying emojis. I was sitting there within the confines of my washroom, the application of eye cosmetics completely abandoned, and I simply commenced indiscriminately clicking through every piece of digital evidence. Every single member of his extended kin who had offered a comment was extending their congratulations to the pair. His aunt offered some remark regarding their visual perfection as a couple. His father's comment was a laconic, "About time, son." Roland's brother posted 5 flame-shaped emojis beneath a photograph of them dancing, and Roland himself had digitally acknowledged and composed a response to the post. He had inscribed, "Amazing day. My gratitude for including us," coupled with a heart emoji. Us, not just me and him. Him and her. Jasmine had to physically confiscate my handheld device because I was trembling with such severity that I nearly dropped it. She compelled me to become seated and demanded to know the nature of the crisis. When I presented the evidence to her, she underwent the same emotional progression I had endured, with the exception that she immediately commenced shouting. She expressed an immediate desire to operate her vehicle to his residential dwelling at that precise moment and aggressively challenge him, but I countermanded her suggestion, reasoning that he was ostensibly still at the wedding celebrations, reportedly en route to some familial brunch gathering that very morning. He transmitted a text message to me around 10 a.m., expressing that he missed me and that the wedding had been magnificent, though he wished I could have been in attendance. He appended a digital self-portrait of himself, handsomely attired in his formal suit, and stated he was eagerly anticipating seeing me that very evening. I refrained from immediate reciprocation because I was attempting to rationally determine what in the everlasting hell I should undertake. I proceeded to my place of employment, but I was utterly ineffectual. My line manager, Dwight, inquired if I was experiencing any physical discomfort because I botched no fewer than 3 retail price verifications in rapid succession. I fibbed, telling him I was succumbing to an impending, intense headache. During my prescribed rest period, I did what any rational individual would immediately do. I entered full, intense, highly detailed investigative measures (FBI mode) on this Carol woman's Instagram account. Her digital profile was configured for public viewing. Jackpot! I began scrolling chronologically backward through her shared posts, and the entire panorama of my relationship flashed before my visual perception as if I were in the throes of a near-death experience. The undercover investigation. 6 months prior, there was a shared image of sophisticated alcoholic beverages at an upscale urban bar with the caption, "Finest evening dates with my most cherished individual." And you can distinctly perceive Roland's timepiece in the periphery of the photograph, the very same distinctive wrist clock bequeathed to him by his paternal grandfather that he never removes. For months prior, a photograph showcasing a beautifully arranged dinner setting, complete with luminous candles and scattered rose petals. The caption read, "Anniversary commemoration dinner with my love. 2 amazing years in partnership." The specified date on that digital post? My actual birthday. The very night Roland informed me he was afflicted with food poisoning and was incapable of attending the dinner reservation I had painstakingly secured weeks in advance. I spent my 26th birthday eating solitary takeaway while he was, by all accounts, commemorating their 2-year anniversary. 3 months prior, a self-portrait taken in a reflective surface where she is clad in one of those matching couples' hooded sweatshirts emblazoned with the words, "His Queen." And one can partially discern an individual behind her sporting the complimentary "Her King" variant. 2 months prior, a vacation post originating from some seaside resort. Expressing gratitude for this gentleman who treats me with the deference accorded to royalty. This was during the precise week Roland had informed me he was obligated to undertake an occupational journey to Ohio for mandated training. Ohio. He had stated he would barely possess the temporal capacity to engage in video calls because the schedule was exceptionally demanding. There exist dozens of such documented occasions: dinners, musical performances, weekend excursions, holiday observances. Every single instance he had informed me he was preoccupied with professional obligations, familial matters, or his male acquaintances' poker gathering, he was demonstrably in her company. She was not even attempting to conceal this parallel life. She possesses pictorial evidence of their association extending back 2 complete years, the identical duration of time I have been involved with him. I was scrolling through this entire horrifying compendium of lies within the target employee rest area, and I yearned to shriek. I desired to hurl my handheld device across the confined space. I wished to operate my vehicle to his current location and precipitate a dramatic confrontation, but an unseen force restrained me. Perhaps it was the sheer stupefaction. Perhaps it was the segment of my cerebrum that was already formulating a measured, punitive strategy. I am uncertain. When I arrived at my residential dwelling that evening, I disclosed every single finding to Jasmine. She was incensed. She wanted to verbally assault him on social media, contact him telephonically, transmit him furious text messages, and inform his entire family precisely what a piece of detritus he truly is. But I instructed her that I required time to meditate upon this development. I needed to fully process this extraordinary deception. And honestly, I was intensely curious to observe his next action. Roland arrived at my apartment around 7 p.m., exactly as we had previously arranged. He appeared fatigued but content. He afforded me a massive embrace and stated that he had missed me to an extraordinary degree. He emitted a distinct olfactory sense of cologne, and I wondered if he had applied it profusely to mask the lingering trace of her fragrance. He held his phone in his grasp and declared his desire to display the photographs from the wedding. This is the moment where I apparently transformed into an actress worthy of an esteemed dramatic accolade, because I became seated beside him on my sofa, produced a radiant smile and responded, "I would be delighted to examine them." He accessed his camera roll and began navigating through the images. But here is the critical detail: every single photograph had been meticulously edited. Images of him alongside his cousins, with his parental figures, with Natasha and her husband at the venue, near the decorative elements. No fair-haired female was visible anywhere. He had either digitally cropped her out of the frame or selected angles where she was not perceptible. He displayed roughly 20 images to me, discussing the overall magnificence of the event, the profound emotional impact of the ritual, the sheer volume of available cuisine, and how his uncle had consumed too much alcohol and engaged in embarrassing behavior. He was so utterly nonchalant about the entire recitation, so remarkably normal, as if he had not just spent the entirety of the preceding day with a completely different woman whom his entire family believes is his committed female companion. I inquired as to who he sat with during the main dinner, and he replied, "Oh, just kin." It wasn't particularly stimulating. I asked if he participated in dancing, and he claimed merely with his mother and Natasha. The typical wedding participation, he said. He looked directly into my visual organs and articulated a falsehood with such frightening smoothness. I maintained the deception. I concurred that everything appeared beautiful. I apologized for my enforced absence. I expressed delight that he enjoyed himself. He pressed a kiss upon my forehead and proclaimed, the next familial occasion I am definitively attending. He will personally guarantee my presence. He remained at my dwelling that night. I shall refrain from entering into specifics, but it was incredibly arduous to maintain the pretense that everything was completely acceptable when all I could conceptually focus on was him touching her in the identical manner he was currently touching me. When he finally succumbed to slumber, I withdrew into the washroom and simply sat upon the floor for approximately 1 hour, attempting to suppress my tears and avoid waking him. The subsequent morning was Saturday. He departed around 10 a.m. because he claimed he was required to provide assistance to his father with some domestic task at his parents' residence. The instant he exited the premises, I retrieved my personal computer and began meticulously re-examining every single piece of evidence. I captured digital screenshots of every solitary post from Carol's profile that demonstrated proof of their shared life. I scrutinized Roland's Instagram with increased vigilance and discerned that he does not publish content frequently, but when he does, it consists solely of solo self-portraits or generic, unspecific material. Nothing indicative of a couple, nothing that would suggest he had any romantic partner whatsoever. Concurrently, Carol's Instagram is replete with relationship-centric content, only with his facial features typically obscured or cut out of the frame. Intelligent, I suppose. She must be aware of my existence. She has to know about me. Roland and I are digital acquaintances on social platforms. We are occasionally digitally tagged in posts shared by mutual friends, unless he has informed her that I am merely an acquaintance or a mentally unstable former partner who persistently refuses to relinquish control. Deity, I am completely lost for answers. Sunday, I achieved minimal rest. I persistently cycled through various theoretical scenarios in my mind. Do I directly confront him? Do I transmit a digital message to Carol? Do I publicly expose him? Do I simply disappear from his life? My mother contacted me to check in, as is her ritual every Sunday, and I was unable to divulge the unfolding events because she holds Roland in high regard. She would be utterly devastated. Monday morning, I transmitted a pleasantry text message to Roland as per our routine. He reciprocated with his customary affectionate messages. We maintained our regular textual exchange throughout the day. He dispatched a humorous digital image that reminded him of my personality, inquired about the progress of my occupational shift, and stated he was thinking of me. It was a surreal experience, as if I was inhabiting two distinct realities simultaneously. In one reality, I exist within a loving association with a man who texts me throughout the day, addresses me using pet names, and formulates plans for our collective future. In the other reality, I am the peripheral romantic partner who is completely oblivious to the truth, while his actual committed female companion posts their association across all social platforms, and his kin celebrates their union. Monday evening, Roland sent a text message indicating he was exhausted and intended to retire early. I responded, affirmative, rest well. Speak tomorrow. Subsequently, I checked Carol's Instagram story, and she had published a photographic image of takeaway cuisine and a motion picture on the television screen, accompanied by the caption, "Cozy night in with Bae." It was at that instant that a devastating realization solidified. Every instance he had informed me he was excessively fatigued to socialize or required an evening of solitude, he was most likely in her company. Every occasion he abruptly cancelled prior arrangements, he was most likely with her. The weekend excursions he undertook with his male acquaintances were most likely with her. The musical performances he attended, claiming I would not appreciate the band anyway, were most likely with her. I felt so profoundly gullible. However, here is the concept that is causing the most significant cognitive dissonance. He has been so competent at this deception, terrifyingly proficient, in fact. He texts me every day. He remains overnight at my residential dwelling twice weekly. Typically, we engage in actual, structured dates, not merely concealing ourselves at home. My circle of companions knows him. My kin knows him. We have discussed the prospect of cohabiting next year. He has met my parental figures multiple times. He spent the Christmas holiday with us. He was present at my cousin's baby shower last month. How does one sustain two completely separate relationships in this manner? How does one meticulously recall which specific falsehoods were articulated to which individual? The cognitive gymnastics required must be extraordinarily fatiguing. Tuesday, I reported to my place of work and attempted to conduct myself normally, but Jasmine could readily perceive that I was nearing a breaking point. She inquired if I had initiated a confrontation with him yet, and I replied, "Negative, I am still devising my operational strategy." She cautioned, "You need to execute this shortly before you actually suffer a nervous collapse." She is not incorrect. I am barely achieving adequate sleep, and I cannot consume sustenance properly, and I am traversing my days encased in this fog of intense fury, sorrow, and perplexity. Tuesday evening, Roland contacted me for a video call. He was in his apartment, reclined in his sleeping quarters, recounting the events of his day. He appeared so genuine, so amiable. He inquired about my day's events, elicited laughter from me with some anecdote about his occupation, and expressed his affection before we terminated the connection. After the conclusion of our conversation, I consulted Carol's Instagram once more. She had published a story 3 hours prior depicting a person's hand, definitively masculine. It could certainly have been Roland's hand, based on the specific timepiece. The hand was holding hers across a dining surface. Caption: Fortunate girl. I must proceed to recount the events that transpired on Wednesday, because that is when the situation became absolutely unhinged. However, I am approaching the limit of permissible characters, and furthermore, I need to mentally prepare myself to articulate what he perpetrated because I am still actively processing the immense impact. I will provide a subsequent update soon. I simply need to determine my subsequent course of action. If any individual possesses guidance or has traversed an analogous situation, please share your insights. I feel as though I am descending into lunacy, but concurrently I have never possessed more absolute clarity regarding the necessary next steps. First update. Okay, the responses to my preceding post were astonishing and also marginally alarming because some of you accurately predicted the subsequent events. I find myself wondering if you are all gifted with psychic abilities or if deceptive men are just terrifyingly predictable. Firstly, to the individual who suggested I verify whether Carol is cognizant of my existence, you were correct, and the resultant situation is infinitely more chaotic than I had presupposed. But I am getting ahead of the narrative. Permit me to recount Wednesday because it was absolutely deranged. So, Wednesday morning I was roused from sleep by my mobile device literally vibrating off my bedside furnishing. 17 missed attempts to call me from Roland. 17, coupled with a linear series of text messages that became progressively more panicked in tone. The recorded vocal messages were an entirely different experience. The initial one began calmly: "Hello, darling, please return my call when you receive this." By the 8th vocal message, he was practically shouting into the receiver about how I needed to contact him immediately. It was a crisis situation. Please, please, please answer the phone. I sat there in my bed, staring intensely at my device, and to be frank, a segment of my mind was terrified that something genuinely catastrophic had occurred, perhaps a fatality or a hospitalization. But then I recalled the digital screenshots on my phone of him with Carol, and I determined that, whatever the nature of this crisis, he was fully capable of enduring the wait. I took my time meticulously preparing for my occupation, executed my entire multi-step skincare regimen, and actually compelled myself to ingest morning nourishment for the first time in several days. Jasmine was already awake, and when she observed my methodical and placid demeanor, she commented that I resembled a serial offender formulating a nefarious scheme. And honestly, that is a fair characterization. Around 8 a.m., he placed another call. I elected to answer this time. Before I could even articulate a greeting, he was speaking with such alarming rapidity that I could scarcely comprehend his words. Something about Instagram, something about his family unit, something about this being a massive error in interpretation. He repeatedly declared, "We need to engage in a discussion right now. What is your location?" "He will come to me. I can proceed to his residence. He will report an absence from his occupation due to illness. This cannot be deferred." I informed him that I was in the final stages of preparing for work and had the opening shift, so I was unavailable for discussion at that precise moment. The subsequent silence on the opposite end of the connection was unbearably intense. Then he inquired if I had observed something online, and I feigned ignorance, stating, "I don't know what you are referencing. I've been extremely occupied. Is everything satisfactory?" He commenced rambling about how his cousin's wedding photographs had been published, and there might be certain images that appear awkward, but it is not what it seems, and he is capable of providing a full elucidation, but he needs to execute this in person. I replied, "Affirmative, I conclude my occupational duties at 5 p.m. We can convene thereafter." He attempted to advocate for an earlier time during my midday rest period, any time, but I remained resolute. 5 p.m. We would convene at the outdoor parking facility of the retail center proximate to my residential area, because I needed to acquire some items from the dispensary in any case. You should have heard him attempting to persuade me to consent to meeting in a more discreet locale. He proposed his apartment, my apartment, even the residence of his parental figures, which was utterly unbelievable, but I maintained, negative, the parking facility is perfectly suitable. I will see you then. He attempted to prolong the phone conversation, but I emphatically informed him that I truly had to depart and terminated the connection. Jasmine was gazing at me as if I had developed an auxiliary head. She inquired about my finalized strategy, and to be honest, I did not possess a complete plan yet, but I was certain I desired for him to be in a state of intense anxiety. I wanted him to spend the entire day in a state of terror regarding the extent of my knowledge and the retaliatory actions I was preparing to undertake. My occupational shift felt painfully protracted because I was operating solely on sheer, unadulterated adrenaline. My colleague Stephanie repeatedly inquired if I had consumed an excessive quantity of coffee because I was, in essence, vibrating with nervous energy. During my midday break, I consulted Carol's Instagram once more, and she had published a story that morning, merely a simple textual post that stated, "When you discover you're not the sole individual, ladies, always place your faith in your intuition." Consequently, she was aware, or she had just recently discovered the situation. This implied that some external event had transpired to expose this entire convoluted situation to one or both of them. I was attempting to deduce the trigger for this exposure when my mobile device vibrated with a text message. The message inquired, "Is this the female who has been romantically involved with Roland?" And I genuinely nearly dropped my phone into the employee washroom basin, but I refrained from responding because, honestly, I had no idea who this mysterious sender was. I was certainly not about to engage with calls from unidentified telephone numbers. Then I received a subsequent text message from a distinct number. This one declared, "I am his brother, Frederick. We are required to talk." Frederick. Roland had casually referenced his sibling a few times, but they were not particularly close because Frederick was younger and, apparently, somewhat of a source of difficulty. I had not yet been formally introduced to him because he resided several hours distant, and now he was initiating textual communication with me. I responded by inquiring how he had procured my telephone number, and he disclosed that he had accessed Roland's device that morning when Roland was in the shower, experiencing a complete panic. He elaborated that he had been suspicious of his brother for an extended period because the family consistently discussed Carol as Roland's committed partner, yet Roland would offer peculiar comments about being too occupied or having arrangements that simply did not align logically. Frederick informed me that at the wedding, he observed Roland being extraordinarily meticulous about his position in photographs, and it struck him as highly peculiar. Therefore, subsequent to the matrimonial event, he had examined Roland's mobile device while everyone was inebriated and discovered my textual exchanges with Roland, uncovered photographs of us together, and located the entire comprehensive deception. He confronted Roland that morning and Roland apparently suffered a complete emotional collapse. According to Frederick's account, Roland confessed to maintaining romantic associations with both of us. He informed Frederick that he had commenced dating Carol initially, subsequently met me, developed profound feelings for me, but was incapable of determining a method to terminate the relationship with Carol due to the intricate intertwinement of their familial structures. He had been laboring to keep us segregated and was planning to eventually gradually phase Carol out, but matters had become exceedingly complex. I was assimilating all of this during a 30-minute midday break, and I was incandescent with fury because, naturally, Roland's recounting of the events renders him a tortured, sympathetic figure who simply became overwhelmed, presenting himself as the victim of his own duplicity. Frederick stated he informed Roland that he was a piece of garbage and needed to disclose the truth to everyone. He also added that their maternal figure had been publishing content about Carol incessantly, and it was evident that she was completely unaware of my existence. He desired to caution me prior to my participation in whatever discussion Roland was attempting to orchestrate. I inquired of Frederick why he was extending this assistance to me, and he explained that his brother is a cowardly and mendacious individual, and he is weary of observing him engage in these manipulative endeavors. Furthermore, apparently Roland had borrowed a considerable sum of money from Frederick several months prior, claiming he required it for a professional certification course. But Frederick subsequently discovered that he had actually utilized the funds to take Carol on a weekend excursion. Therefore, there existed some degree of sibling resentment involved as well. This was a monumental volume of information to process during a 30-minute luncheon interval. I expressed my profound gratitude to Frederick for his disclosure and confirmed that I would be engaging in a conversation with Roland later. He made me pledge not to allow Roland to manipulate my perception of reality, and I assured him, "Have confidence in me, I shall not." The remaining duration of my occupational shift was agonizingly slow. Every instance my phone vibrated, I anticipated it would be Roland, but he had actually ceased transmitting messages subsequent to our morning telephone call. That fact honestly rendered me more nervous than his frantic earlier messages. It suggested he was methodically planning some countermeasure. 5 p.m. finally arrived and I drove my vehicle to the retail complex. Roland's vehicle was already situated there, parked near the pharmacy entryway. When I positioned my car beside his and exited, he practically vaulted out of his own vehicle. He immediately attempted to embrace me, and I took a deliberate step backward. I informed him that we were required to converse, but I would not be participating in the whole emotional manipulation routine where he physically touches me and I momentarily forget the source of my anger. He appeared emotionally wounded but capitulated. "All right, fine. Can we at least be seated inside one of the cars?" We ultimately sat within the confines of my automobile because I desired the ability to depart whenever I so chose. The instant I secured the door, he commenced speaking, just this massive verbal outpouring about how he has been so profoundly stressed. He has perpetrated terrible errors. He never intended for any of this to unfold. He holds an immense affection for me. I am the individual he genuinely desires to be with. Carol was simply a relationship that he could not determine a method to conclude. I permitted him to speak for possibly 5 continuous minutes while I simply sat there gazing intently at him. Then I posed the query, "For how long? How long have you been involved with Carol?" He initially attempted to diminish the gravity of the situation, stating they had been intermittent, on and off. It was complicated, he claimed, but I exerted pressure. I informed him I had examined her Instagram. I knew she had been publishing content about their association for 2 years, which was the identical duration of my relationship with him. He became silent. Then he conceded that, yes, technically they had been together for that duration, but it was not serious with her until after he met me, a statement that made no rational sense. But, okay, Roland, sure. I inquired about the wedding, about his jacket draped over her shoulders and him kissing her temple and being seated at the familial dining table with her. About his mother's digital comment regarding her being a future daughter-in-law. He appeared as if he wished to perish immediately. He stated that his family has always exerted pressure to bring him and Carol together because her family and his have been close acquaintances forever. He felt a sense of compulsion to bring her to the matrimonial event. He claimed he was planning to end the relationship with her subsequent to the wedding, but then the photographs were disseminated and the entire situation exploded. I asked him if Carol was aware of my existence, and he became defensive. He asserted that Carol knew he was not exclusive to her, that they had discussed seeing other people, which was clearly a falsehood because her Instagram literally designated him as her boyfriend, her love, and discussed their anniversary. Then I introduced the subject of the birthday dinner, my birthday, where he falsely claimed to be afflicted with food poisoning but was actually commemorating his anniversary with Carol. He attempted to argue that he had confused the dates. It was an error in comprehension, but I could clearly discern in his facial expression that he knew he was irrefutably apprehended. I inquired about the professional travel to Ohio, about all the evenings he claimed to be weary or occupied, about the musical performances and dinners, and every solitary falsehood he had ever articulated. He simply persisted in articulating his profound regret. He was so incredibly sorry. He had made terrible decisions, and he would undertake any measure to rectify this. That is the moment I posed the query that I believe utterly shattered his composure. I asked which one of us he was eventually planning to select if any of this elaborate deception had worked out precisely as he had intended. He became extremely quiet. Then he proclaimed that he desired to be with me. He loved me. Carol was she was simply someone his family approved of. But I was the one who genuinely brought him felicity. And do you know what I realized sitting there, listening to his pathetic monologue? He was not even accepting genuine accountability. Everything was about circumstances and obligations and misunderstandings. Not a single instance did he declare, I deliberately engaged in deception toward you for 2 full years. I am a philanderer. I am garbage. I informed him I required time for deep consideration, that this was an excessive amount of information to process, and I was incapable of reaching any determinations at that moment. He became frantic. He commenced begging me not to abandon him, asserting we could navigate this crisis. He would terminate the relationship with Carol immediately. He would inform his entire family about me, whatever I requested. I stated that if he desired any prospect of rectifying this situation, he needed to grant me unconditional space. No text messages, no telephone calls, no abrupt appearance at my residence, simply time. He acquiesced reluctantly but persistently attempted to touch my hand or embrace me in farewell. And I consistently withdrew my physical presence. As I was preparing to operate my vehicle away, he tapped upon my window pane. I lowered the glass and he pleaded, please refrain from executing any impetuous decisions. Please do not inform anyone about this yet. Allow him to properly resolve matters first. The unmitigated cheek of the man. He was still attempting to regulate the narrative and safeguard his personal standing. I drove home and immediately disclosed the entire sequence of events to Jasmine. She was raging. She wanted to call him, send messages, post everything on social media, but I informed her I needed to be strategically minded here. I needed to determine precisely what outcome I desired before I initiated any retaliatory measures. That evening I could not cease contemplating what Frederick had disclosed, about Roland using borrowed capital for an excursion with Carol. About how the family was entirely oblivious to my existence, about how Carol's Instagram unequivocally indicated that she believed they were in an exclusive romantic partnership. Thursday morning I was roused by 3 text messages from Roland, despite his prior agreement to grant me space, merely checking in, thinking of me, hoping I was well. I did not reciprocate the communication. Then, around the midday mealtime, my mobile device rang with an unfamiliar number. This time I answered, and it was Roland's maternal parent, his mother, who has been demonstrably cold to me for 2 years, who commented on the wedding photographs about Carol being her future daughter-in-law. She inquired if I was the female Roland had been dating, and I confirmed that I was. She informed me that Roland had confessed to her about the predicament, and she expressed a desire to converse with me about it. She proposed that we convene for a midday meal on Saturday at this restaurant she particularly favors, just the 2 of us, so we could engage in a proper conversation regarding her son's behavior. I was so utterly astonished that I simply agreed without prior contemplation. After we terminated the call, I realized I had just consented to dine with my philandering boyfriend's mother, who clearly favors his other girlfriend. What was I thinking? But then I reasoned, you know what? Perhaps this is exactly the opportunity one require, because if I am going to reach a definitive decision regarding Roland, I need to comprehend the complete situation. And who better to enlighten me about his association with Carol than his own mother? Jasmine believes I have become entirely insane, but also respects the strategic aspect of the move. She made me promise to transmit a text message to her every 30 minutes during the luncheon to ensure my personal safety. So now I am scheduled to partake in a meal with Roland's mother on Saturday, and I possess absolutely no conception of what she intends to communicate to me. Is she going to advise me to terminate the relationship with him? Is she going to defend his actions? Is she going to attempt to persuade me that Carol is a superior match for him? And honestly, I am no longer certain of what resolution I even desire. A segment of my being wants to utterly incinerate his entire existence, but another segment merely yearns for definitive responses. I want to comprehend how an individual could maintain this level of deception for 2 full years without experiencing any discernible sense of guilt. Roland transmitted another text message this morning, stating he misses me and is granting me the space I requested, but that it is causing him extreme emotional anguish. I still have not responded. I will provide a subsequent update following the Saturday lunch. This entire matter feels as though it is spiraling into something significantly larger than just a situation involving a cheating boyfriend, and I am equally parts terrified and completely prepared to confront whatever outcome inevitably arises. The lunch with Martha and final realization. My Saturday morning was an absolute catastrophe of preparation. I physically changed my attire approximately 4 times because what does one even select to wear for a meal with your deceptive boyfriend's maternal figure, who so clearly holds preference for his alternative partner? Jasmine finally instructed me to simply wear denim trousers and a respectable top and to cease the excessive rumination. She compelled me to swear that I would text her every half hour and stated that if I failed to respond, she would initiate contact with the law enforcement authorities, a highly dramatic statement, but one for which I was nevertheless appreciative. The establishment Roland's mother, Martha, selected was an upscale dining venue located within a retail complex approximately 20 minutes from my residential dwelling. I arrived first and remained seated in my vehicle for 10 minutes, administering a personal pep talk. I persistently recalled all the encouraging digital comments urging me to remain steadfast, not to permit her to manipulate me, to remember my intrinsic self-worth. I extend my gratitude to every person who offered that encouragement because I desperately required it. Roland's mother, Martha, appeared precisely on schedule. She is one of those women who perpetually appears impeccably groomed. Even when she is supposedly dressed casually, she is clad in expensive apparel and flawless cosmetic application. We were escorted to a table near the rear of the establishment, and the initial few minutes consisted solely of awkward, perfunctory conversation while we examined the menus. She inquired about my occupation. I asked about her volunteer activities at the ecclesiastical institution she frequently references. Both of us were cautiously navigating around the genuine purpose of our meeting. Finally, subsequent to placing our food orders, she addressed the matter directly. She stated that Roland had disclosed the entire situation to her, and she desired to understand the situation from my individual viewpoint. She wished to ascertain the duration of Roland and my romantic involvement and the precise nature of our association. I imparted the unvarnished truth: 2 complete years. We had been together for 2 years. We had discussed the prospect of cohabiting. He had spent holiday observances with my kin, the entire comprehensive relationship experience. I referenced specific occasions, such as the Christmas holiday at my parental figure's house and my cousin's baby shower, times when he was fully incorporated into the fabric of my life. Martha's facial expression assumed a peculiar appearance. She stated that this was not possible because Roland has been involved with Carol for over 3 complete years. They had been dating since Carol's penultimate year of collegiate studies when she returned home for the summer and re-established contact with Roland. Martha and Carol's mother had been nurturing the hope that they would become a couple for years before it finally materialized. 3 years, not 2. Which signifies that he had commenced dating me while already a full year into his relationship with Carol. I was not even the primary girlfriend. I was the secondary one, he had added. Martha admitted she had been cognizant of my existence for approximately 6 months. Roland had mentioned he was casually seeing someone, but that it was not serious and she should not be concerned about it. He had informed his mother I was merely an individual he was socializing with while he determined his future trajectory with Carol. She genuinely believed I was aware that I was merely a casual dalliance. I was physically obliged to set down my glass of water because my hands were violently trembling. I informed her that Roland and I were unequivocally not casual. We were committed to a dedicated romantic partnership. He had confessed his affection for me. We had formulated extensive plans for our shared future. I extracted my mobile device and began displaying photographs of us together, text message exchanges, everything. Martha appeared genuinely staggered as she reviewed the content on my device. She repeatedly insisted that she possessed absolutely no idea. Roland had never disclosed any of this information. She was under the impression that I was just some female he had escorted on a few dates. Then she returned my device and stated she was required to be candid with me regarding a sensitive matter. She explained that Carol's family is exceedingly influential within their shared social strata. Carol's father is a highly successful business proprietor who has facilitated connecting Roland with professional opportunities. Carol's maternal figure and Martha have been closest friends since their collegiate years. Their families undertake leisure trips together, commemorate holiday observances together. Their individual lives are completely and irreversibly intertwined. When Roland and Carol initiated their relationship, everyone was immensely pleased because it felt as if the families were officially merging together. Martha confessed she had never particularly warmed to me because Roland consistently maintained my separation from the family unit, and that factor rendered her suspicious. She conjectured that I was attempting to ensnare her son or that I possessed some underlying nefarious objective. But upon observing the digital evidence I had presented, she was beginning to comprehend that perhaps Roland had been systematically lying to everyone, not just Carol and me. Then she articulated a statement that caused an intense desire within me to append the dining surface. She stated that even with the knowledge of all this new information, she still believed Carol was the more appropriate match for Roland. Carol originated from the correct type of kin, possessed the appropriate level of education, and integrated flawlessly into their social circle. I was pleasant enough, she conceded, but I was employed in the retail sector and lacked the same perceived pedigree. She was being brutally explicit about her perception of me as inherently inferior. I should have immediately exited the premises at that juncture, but I was so consumed by fury that I remained. I informed her that her offspring had engaged in deception toward 2 women for a period of years, had articulated falsehoods to everyone, including his own maternal figure, had deliberately kept his life systematically segregated and meticulously managed so no individual would ascertain the truth, and her central concern was regarding social hierarchy. She claimed I was being overly dramatic and that these circumstances occur, romantic associations are complex, Roland was young and had perpetrated errors. She posited that perhaps the optimal resolution would be for me to voluntarily withdraw and permit Roland and Carol to resolve their issues, since they possessed a longer shared history and their respective families were already connected. I inquired of her if Carol was aware that Roland had been informing his mother that I was merely casual. Martha admitted she did not know what Carol was or was not cognizant of because Roland had apparently been controlling that critical information as well. She said she had attempted to initiate a discussion with Carol's mother about the situation, but Roland had implored her not to disclose anything until he